Welcome to the First Impressions Podcast, the official podcast of the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams. Every month, Chris John Riley and myself, Martin McKay, share informal conversations with security professionals from around the globe. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers alone, and any sarcasm you hear is purely intentional. For more information on FIRST or this podcast, please check out first.org.
Chris John Riley. We're here at the FIRST conference in Montreal, and we're lucky enough to take some time today to talk to Taki Uchiyama, program chair for the 36th annual FIRST conference happening next year in Japan. Taki, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I know it's a little bit early. We're still at the 35th conference. We wanted to take some time to grab you and have a quick chat about what the themes are for next year and what the plans roughly are. I know we're a year away, but people are already excited.
Thanks. So we already have a conference theme. The conference theme for next year will be Bridging Security Response Gaps. This sort of builds upon the themes over the past couple of years, especially this year's, where we've talked about empowering communities. Yesterday's keynote is on including women and more diversity. So we have these gaps in diversity right now. We'd like to include more presentations, not just on gender, but also regional, teams, sectoral. And that's sort of what I'm looking for in some of the submissions next year.
It's a great idea. I mean, obviously, diversity is a big thing, has been in the industry for a long while. It's great to see FIRST continue to move in the right direction there. But obviously, women in tech was a big theme from yesterday's keynotes and some of the follow-up. But there's also a range of other diversity that we as FIRST can really look at.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. And one of the things that I noticed that on the agenda today, on Thursday, was there was a presentation from the Malawi CSIRT talking about some of their experiences and challenges and experiences in trying to stand up an actual CSIRT operation in the Pacific Islands and, where they are. Those are some of the gaps that we'd like to kind of fill starting next year and build upon that moving forward.
Different perspectives can teach us a lot about how to handle things. There's a lot that, large teams can help to share information with the smaller teams, but also I think there's a lot of insights with smaller teams coming up. They can teach us a lot about how to get back to the basics as well.
Yes, and I work for a relatively large team as well, and I'm certainly willing to learn from them as well.
Talking a little bit about the actual physical conference itself, it's happening in, I'm going to butcher this, as I always do, Fukuoka? Fukuoka. I was close. There was an F in there somewhere. So it's a little bit different. People maybe are familiar with Japan and more the northern areas, Tokyo, Kyoto, the common areas. So tell us a little bit about the location where the conference is going to be.
So Fukuoka is in southern Japan. It's further south, so there's Tokyo sort of in the middle of Japan, Osaka, Kyoto, and sort of a little bit south of that, and then it's further south than that. So Fukuoka is on Kyushu. It's in an island a little bit off of the main island. And that's where we'll have the conference. It's a fantastic place. I've only been there a couple of times personally, but it's been a place that's been used for trade historically in Japan, trading with other countries, especially Europe.
It's going to hopefully give people an opportunity to see a different kind of Japan and a different side of Japan as well. For those who might be interested in taking part in the conference, I know we're very early in the process right now. We're a year away from the conference in Japan, but how can people get involved if they're interested in giving a talk or they'd like to try and attend?
So there's a couple of things. First, we'll put together a program committee to put together the whole program. Volunteers, we'll start asking for volunteers hopefully by the end of this month. After that, we'll start putting together this call for papers, which will be out later this year. Submission should be due sometime later this year as well. And then we'll get everything out in preparation for June.
And if people are looking for themes, as you mentioned, some of the smaller teams, you're looking at trying to get smaller teams and emerging teams, as you mentioned to me earlier, to be more involved. So hopefully if those teams are listening to the podcast and you're able to attend, we will hope that you can come along.
If you know anybody from those teams, please take some time to reach out to them, and if they're available, willing and able, feel free to direct them in my direction. I can certainly help them put together an abstract for a paper to talk. Willing to help. We have many folks that are willing to help do this to get their message out. So I'm looking forward to working with the community over the next year to get a good show out.
Thank you very much, Taki, for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and very much looking forward to next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the First Impressions podcast, and thanks to this week's guest. You can find Chris John Riley on Twitter at Chris John Riley, all one word. You can find me, Martin McKay, on Twitter at MCKEAY. And you can find the FIRST organization at first.org, FIRSTDOT.org. You can also find more information about FIRST and the First Impressions podcast at first.org. Thanks again for listening.